Well, hi, my name is Kristin Kaufman. Welcome. I am the CEO and founder of a company by the name of Alignment, and we focus on helping individuals, teams, and organizations find alignment within themselves and ultimately within groups of individuals and ultimately to their markets. And how I define alignment is when individuals and teams determine what they love to do, they're good at it, and most importantly, it's tied to something much greater than themselves. And when that comes together, they become their most powerful and certainly their most effective. So every few days, I come on here to share a couple of insights that I have either picked up from clients or through my own experience that I'm hopeful will help people as we journey toward that alignment destination. And today, I actually want to talk about what I'm going to call the 3 C's. The 3 C's of what has held people back in the past, and what I'm personally witnessing is holding people back in any of my businesses that I personally manage and lead, but also with clients that I'm working with. Okay, the first is the good old competition. When people are competing with one another, where they're not competing with themselves. They're not competing to become the best they can be, but they actually are competing with one another, which oftentimes can manifest in a way that is not healthy at all. I personally witnessed this for many years when I was in corporate, where all of us were running so fast. We were wanting to climb that ladder. We were wanting to achieve whatever it was that we had put before ourselves. And oftentimes, rather than to be competing with our own personal best, we were looking to the right and looking to the left, and we were competing with others. And I've never been a proponent of that. I think healthy competition, when you're competing with other companies, certainly in other product offerings, et cetera, that's the good old free enterprise system, and that's capitalism at its best. And I'm a huge believer in free enterprise and capitalism, especially in business. However, I'm not a big proponent of when we are competing against one another and we're tearing one another down in the process. And that can manifest, and I'm going to go through a couple of examples here in a moment, that can manifest in some really unhealthy ways. And when we see that coming up in our teams and in our organizations, it can really derail the culture that you're trying to build. And that's really not going to be productive for the organization or for your team. And it's certainly not going to be healthy. So that's the first C of what I have seen and witnessed that can hold us back individually and collectively when competition comes off the rails and we're not competing in a healthy way, we're competing in a very unhealthy way. All right, the second thing, and this is tied very closely to the first thing, and that is comparison. You know, oftentimes we will fall into the tendency of, again, looking to the right and looking to the left and comparing ourselves to others, whether those in our teams, in our organizations, or perhaps even with another company or another venue. And we feel less than. We feel like we are not going to be able to ever compare or ever measure up because we're comparing ourselves to them. And that, you know, I'm guilty of that. I'll be honest. In my prior career, I was always aspiring to grow and learn, and I used other people as the benchmark, which actually is not an unhealthy thing to look and to admire and to want to emulate and to want to learn from others. That is a healthy way of factoring in comparison into your life. When it becomes unhealthy and perhaps derails us is when we compare and we feel like we will never reach our potential because we're comparing ourselves to others. We have to realize that we're unique and our skills and talents there'll never be another person like us. So our skills and talents and how we show up and the combination of what we bring to the table is what makes us unique. It's what makes us powerful. And that's the reason why, frankly, I cabbaged onto this concept of alignment, because when we become aligned to ourselves, what we're good at, our strengths, what makes us happy and what makes us fulfilled, and ultimately what we become good at, right? What we love to do, what we're good at. And ultimately, when it's tied to something greater than ourselves, man, that's when it all comes together. And that's when no one's going to ever be able to derail us because we are in our flow. We are in our most grounded state. So again, comparing ourselves to one another in an unhealthy way and trying to become like them without acknowledging our own uniqueness and our own value and our own gifts and services that we provide to the world, not to mention to our teams, our organizations, and our companies, that's when we become wobbly. So that's the second piece, and it will hold us back if we continue to compete and compare with those with whom we are working. And the last thing that I will say, and this one is near and dear to my heart because I've recently experienced it in a company that I'm working with, and that is control. You know, I love being in control of my time, how I work, the companies and the clients with whom I choose to work. That's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur, is that we do ultimately have the liberation, I couldn't get that word out, that liberation of controlling how and who we decide to work with. However, when we control information, when we control what we want to share with people, when we try to control others, that's when it becomes less than productive, because control, and I was sharing this with a CEO client of mine just a few weeks ago, we are at our most powerful when we release control. When we release control, all of a sudden we gain control, because our power is not attached to anyone else. And I know that may sound woo-woo, and that may sound like I'm, you know, reaching for something that's not there, but I will tell you my own experience. The moment that I released control or perceived control over a person or a situation that is not my own, that was when I became most powerful and most grounded. Because at the end of the day, and I've said this many times for those of y'all who have followed me, my father had a wonderful adage. He said, you know, you really don't control anything, Kristin, but your own ABCs. And your own ABCs are: you control your attitude, you control your behavior, and you control your choices. You don't control anybody else's. And so once we get that in our head and we realize that we are indeed in control over our responses to things, then that becomes a very grounding, powerful realization. And what I will end with on this aspect of control is that I think oftentimes people think that if they hoard information and they don't share with others, and they are inclusive and insular with who they want to include in a meeting, or who they want to include in a retreat, or who they want to include in getting the information ahead of time, that is just a waste of energy. And frankly, it is never going to serve any of us when we do that, because ultimately we are all better when we help everyone reach their potential, and all of us reach whatever it is that we are aspiring to reach. And as that beautiful prose, you know, a lifting tide lifts all boats, and it truly does. So controlling anything outside of our own attitudes, behaviors, and choices is a limiting behavior. So those are my thoughts on the three things that I think can hold us back, whether we are in corporate, whether we are an aspiring entrepreneur, we own a small business, or we are a portfolio entrepreneur in my case. Releasing the competition with others and refocusing that on competition with ourselves, comparing ourselves to others except by way of a benchmark or a role model, that can be a very self-defeating philosophy. And then the third is relinquishing that we really don't control anything other than ourselves and our ABCs and how we approach life. So those are my 3 C's for today. Again, my name is Kristin Kaufman, and I'm the CEO and founder of a company by the name of Alignment, where we help individuals, groups, teams, organizations, nonprofits, and for-profits become aligned within themselves individually as well as culturally, and ultimately how they align to their markets. And it would be my very great pleasure and privilege to work with you if I can help you in any way. I'll put my contact information below. You can follow me on YouTube. You can subscribe to my blogs. And certainly if you'd like to have a personal conversation of how I might be able to help you navigate as we enter into this new year, it would be my pleasure. Make it a great day and a wonderful week.